So 20 years on from the year that Wycombe Wanderers made the semi-final of the FA Cup, we're speaking to one of the heroes from the fourth round tie against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Looking forward to the game against Spurs coming up on Monday night. Delighted to be joined by Mr. Sam Parkin. Sam, it must make you feel old thinking that it's 20 years ago now since you as a sprightly late teenager coming into the club and making a name for yourself. Time's flown by, hasn't it?
It has, really has. Can still kind of feel what that emotion was really over probably the course of that weekend. Still one of my fondest memories, undoubtedly. I think growing up, being a football nut, a QPR nut in particular, going to games, you hope you're going to be out on that pitch and playing in the FA Cup, but whether you actually believe it is probably another thing. So to play during that cup run and get that goal, it was a boyhood dream, to be honest, and everything that I'd worked for pretty much came true that day. And I remember saying it to my family, as cheesy as it sounds, saying it to my family and my friends that evening, just saying, if it all ended tomorrow, at least I'd had that moment. So yeah, I can still remember and feel what it felt like. It was amazing.
Let's go right back then. You came to Wycombe having had a loan spell at Millwall, I think, just before that. A good run in the Millwall side, but you came over to Wycombe. What were your impressions coming into Adams Park? Laurie Sanchez was manager. You had some real stalwarts of the team, Andy Rammell, Keith Ryan, Steve Brown, etc. Were you made to feel welcome straight away?
Yeah, really was. I was very close to going to QPR. Already touched on was my team, but I got the sense I wasn't going to play regularly there. And having been on the bench subsequently at Millwall, I wanted to play regularly. Laurie Sanchez said all the right things. I thought it was a good opportunity to get games, probably alongside Andy Rammell. And I loved the place immediately. And sometimes, you can get carried away with the cliches about the work ethic and everything that Wycombe is, I suppose, today, right now, the team spirit and all that. And I think some of it is built probably from the non-league days. And some of the lads obviously remained, people like Brownie and Keith Ryan and Jason Cousins and lads like that. And it was quite old school in that regard. But I relished it, loved it. It was off the pitch, really good laugh. I wouldn't say it was that professional at that stage, but when it came to game time or when it came to training, everyone gave absolutely everything, 100%. You couldn't shirk any challenges. You couldn't cut any corners because we had such good professionals. And yeah, I think a lot of it was down to those boys I've already mentioned and the journey that Wycombe had been on. So even at that stage, it had a different feel to it compared to like Millwall, where I'd already been, obviously the Premier League clubs. And we're still talking the third tier of English football. So, it's a great level going to, I think Stoke were in the league that year, Wigan, I think. I suppose we were perennial party poopers turning up, lads that had come out of non-league, lads that weren't fancied elsewhere. But you always got a game when you were coming up against that side.
The original terms of the loan deal meant you weren't allowed to play in the FA Cup, so you would have been watching the games against Millwall and Grimsby, and probably a little bit envious, I guess, because that third round win against Grimsby was the first time Wycombe had ever won a third round game, the first goal they'd ever scored. You must have been itching to get out there.
Yeah, I don't really remember the Millwall games. I don't know if I'd arrived by then, but the Grimsby one must have been a Tuesday or a Wednesday night, and I remember obviously being across the score and then seeing the celebrations coming down, whatever way I got the footage in those days. It wouldn't have been on Twitter or whatever. But I remember, I think Macca scored, and I remember seeing the celebrations and being a tad envious. And that was obviously a sign of things to come later in the run. But yeah, thrilled that they got through. And then obviously delighted that I was able to play my part subsequently when Chelsea allowed me to, which even now I don't really know the reasoning, but I was chuffed that I was allowed to play.
What do you remember about the build-up to this game then against Wolves? I guess from a Wycombe fan's point of view at the time, it wasn't one of the big names. Wolves were the equivalent of a championship club now, but it was still a sold-out game. Big anticipation for our first ever game in the fourth round. Do you remember the build-up being any different to the league games? Was there real hype around the squad?
There probably was in the press and stuff like that, but there wouldn't have been within the group just because, like I've already touched on, that was the mentality of the players. It was just roll your sleeves up, give everything, and hope that you're going to have a bit of quality probably in the final third, which we had with likes of Jermaine McSporran and obviously Rams was a brilliant, lower league striker. A really good person for me to learn off. But no, there wouldn't have been anything special. And I always laugh about, you didn't really see Laurie Sanchez. Obviously I was there for only 3 months. The lads would be able to tell you better tales and stuff. But some weeks you wouldn't really see him, in my recollection, maybe collecting balls over by the bushes from the shooting practice, and Terry Gibson would take it all. And, I'd be lying if I said we focused on the opposition too much. I remember it being a lot of small-sided games, crossing and finishing. But again, really strong-willed, seasoned professionals who had a great desire to win games. So it would have been turn up and give our best, roll our sleeves up, and we can beat anyone on the day. And that's how it turned out.
Yeah, there was a chance the game might not have gone on. There was heavy snowfall on the Friday afternoon, and there were some great pictures of, I think Stuart Castledine from the squad was down with a shovel, the fastest he ever moved, I think, actually, and digging the snow off the pitch. Jim Gardner on his truck, digging it all off. Do you remember being aware that the game might be off? Were you being kept in the loop that morning as to whether the game would be played or not?
Yeah, I remember checking, and I think there'd been games off that winter. I think New Year's Day maybe had been off against Millwall. So there'd been bad weather. And yeah, I remember getting to the game and seeing Jim. I didn't know about Stuart, but he probably would have been able to do it himself. Stuart, he's a monster. I think we used to travel in a little bit together because he's from my neck of the woods as well, and someone I've seen subsequently. So yeah, we were aware of it. And then obviously one of my vivid memories is of the snow piled up behind the goals, and obviously at the home end where Rams put us in front. Obviously, he got the snow involved in the celebration. So yeah, I remember the conditions well, but I remember the pitch being fine. And during that era, generally there wasn't much grass on too many of the pitches anyway.
Yeah, a magical moment with Andy Rammell putting us ahead. I think Wolves came back stronger in the second half. They got their equaliser. It was all set up for a hero. You came off the bench. Do you remember any special instructions that Laurie Sanchez gave to you as you were coming on?
Not really, because I don't know if Laurie was fancying me much at that point, to be completely frank. And I think he said in the aftermath that for a big bloke, I was useless in the air or something, and I'd scored a few on the Friday or something along those lines. But I remember Brownie coming on just prior to me, coming on as a substitute as well. And obviously we combined for the goal, and just tried to pull into an area. And looking back at the team just a minute ago, I think it was Lescott and Naylor, who were obviously two great players for Wolves and had good Premier League careers. And I presume it was those two I pulled in between. And brilliant ball from Brownie and managed to get enough power on it to take it into the net. And the place exploded because, as you've already touched on, I think there was near on 10,000 in there that day. But in terms of instructions, it would have been like Laurie said, I think, after the game, just a day for heroes, really. And he said that consistently throughout that run, make yourself a hero. And there was certainly, there's a whole team of heroes and the whole squad, really, after that, what happened subsequently.
As you touched on, obviously there was no Twitter back then, but do you remember buying the papers the next day and seeing your name everywhere? I remember one headline being about a Parkin fine. That was one of the cliches in the tabloids. And certainly those celebration scenes at the end, I think you were front and centre and rightly grabbing your moment in the limelight.
Yeah, that's partly why it's one of the best days. Obviously, the feeling when it hits the net, what it means to the club, but to be, coming from reserve team football as I was, and then having the goals at Millwall, and then this FA Cup moment, just amazing. I remember being in probably the gym, Adams Park, with must have been 20, 30 members of the press interviewing me, and it was just like incredible buzz. And then, funnily enough, just moved house, and found the shoebox with all the cuttings in it the other day, which my mum's obviously done. Some brilliant cliche headlines given my surname, but yeah, amazing to be. I think it was the story. It was the story that Sunday. So my face was on all the back pages, which was just, again, for someone who was so desperate to be a footballer and absolutely spent every minute watching or playing football, to have that moment in the FA Cup was just beyond my wildest dreams. So again, can see all the headlines and can remember it vividly.
In the next round, there was that extraordinary replay at Selhurst Park, but it obviously very nearly didn't happen. In the first game at Adams Park, we were 2-0 down and looking dead and buried, but that team spirit you've already talked about really shone through, didn't it, to earn that replay?
Yeah, and I remember that being quite a main game on Match of the Day as well. And again, I came off the bench with, I think, 2 other lads that day. I think Danny Ballman and someone else. And yeah, I know the Wolves game gets talked about and the Wimbledon replay, but that game as well, we showed unbelievable resilience. And I think we battered Wimbledon, in that half an hour, 40 minutes or whatever it was. I remember there being chance after chance and myself really feeling that I made an impact. I was a bit of a super sub during those few weeks and months. But yeah, I remember those changes really worked, thoroughly deserved the draw. But from a losing position, I suppose the momentum was just really growing at that point, and the belief that we could achieve something special.
And then in the replay, we could probably talk about that game for hours, but 2 really big contributions for you. The last minute of stoppage time, you've stuck the ball across. And do you remember Danny Ballman having a swing at it, and he's absolutely sliced it into the path of Paul McCarthy, who I still don't understand how he was onside, managed to get a toe to it to force it to penalties. But it was a dreadful pitch, wasn't it? And I guess at that point, you're just trying to throw everything at Wimbledon and hope something comes off.
Yeah, crazy game. I think I was the second sub on, or maybe even the third sub on. I think Rams got injured, and then Beardy got injured as well. It was like crazy. I think I remember looking at Laurie Sanchez going, given like what had happened in the previous 2 games, like, why am I on? Like, what are you doing? And then I got on at half time or just before, and like one of my favourite games, because individually I just felt so, I don't know if it was something about going down to 10 men as well. I say it a lot in my commentary now. It gives the forward players a bit of a freedom when you're down to 10. No one expects. So you can take the extra touch, go beyond people, try skills in the final third, because the rest of the lads probably aren't going to give you a telling off like they would, in a game when it's 11v11. So I remember trying things and it coming off, going past people. And I think Laurie said to me, maybe at half time or at full time, keep taking them on, you'll get a penalty, or keep trying to beat men and stuff like that. And obviously that's where the goal came from. So that was a really good bit of advice from the management that made me go on that little run down the left-hand side. And obviously it ended up in a brilliant finish from Macca again. So such amazing memories of that night. The penalty shootout, obviously, I'll often talk about that because, what was it, 10-9 or 11-10 or something? It was just, it felt like it was never going to end. And to be honest, having not been the best penalty taker throughout my career, I was starting to get worried that I was going to have to take another one. So I was delighted when their centre-half, whose name escapes me, missed the final one.
Well, you scored one of the best penalties from memory. I think top corner, wasn't it? And having seen Keith Ryan blast one over the bar, it must have taken pretty big guts, especially at such a young age and such a pivotal moment, to step up and put that away like that.
Yeah, well, we did it on the Friday. Would it have been the Friday? Probably would have probably been the Monday, wouldn't it? Before the replay, we practiced 5 each, and we were told in no uncertain terms to go the same direction. So I just hit 5 as straight as I could, to be honest. And I think Tails and the other reserve keepers knew where we were going, so probably just stood there tipping them over the bar or whatever. So I'll come clean, I probably didn't catch that one perfectly, and obviously it's come off maybe slightly the outside of the right foot and following into the top corner. So I did remember a few of them going all over the place on the Monday, but that one ended up beautifully, yeah.
It's obviously then such a shame that was your last involvement in the FA Cup for us, because the loan deal ended after that. It wasn't renewed. Now, of course, that led to Roy Essendon coming in and writing his own history, but it must have been gutting for you not to be able to continue that adventure.
Yeah, there was a small chance I could have signed permanently. But at the stage, things were still bubbling away at Chelsea. I thought I may make that progression. It felt a bit early to me to make that move, but I don't know if there was ever a discussion between the two clubs. But yeah, it was obviously I had the injury problems as well, which I think actually was the reason I missed the Leicester game. I could be wrong, but it's a little bit hazy. But I had the injury and obviously the loan coming to the end. But it was really difficult. I can't lie. And, now on reflection, it's an amazing story and I'm thrilled to be part of it. And the players to reach the semi-final is an incredible achievement, but not to be a part of it really killed me. It really hurt. And I remember the day they beat Leicester. My girlfriend at the time was in Manchester. I remember being up there with her and I couldn't really watch it, to be honest. I couldn't really pay attention because it just was hurting so much not to be there. And obviously to get through and then play Liverpool was just sensational. And I got the opportunity to go to that game as a guest of the club. And now being older and looking back, that pain has subsided. And, I'm just very proud of being a small part of it, I suppose.
Yeah, I can remember as a fan, there was a massive clamour to try and get you signed, and you came back and haunted us a few years later, I think, with Swindon, and kind of proved a point that we should have signed you. But of course, everything happens for a reason, and had you signed, then Roy Essendon may not have turned up, and that story may not have been written. But obviously, into more recent times, I know you keep a very close eye across the EFL, a lot of media work that you do. Talk us through your thoughts on Wycombe making it to the Championship for the first time and in the current position that they are.
Just an incredible story. Honestly, the story of the season really last year. And I've already spoken about that Wycombe Wanderers cliche, I suppose, of being unfashionable and what have you. But, I heard the players speaking about it last year. And I speak to Dave Wheeler, obviously a former teammate of mine at Exeter. And it's not until you really watch Wycombe Wanderers live, the modern day Wycombe, when you can actually sense that togetherness. And I really saw it. I was at Wembley for the final and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the way the substitutes involved themselves, the way they were cajoling the players, the way the staff were doing it, probably the directors and Alan Parry and such like. I couldn't believe it. The togetherness was just so evident to me, and it can get you a long way in football. So I completely believe everything that Dave's told me in the last 12 months or so, because I witnessed it at Wembley on that day. And obviously it's going to be really difficult this year. The hardest thing is putting the ball in the net, I think. And for a lot of the lads like Akinfenwa and Matty Bloomfield, the boys that have been there and done it in their careers, but not really tasted the Championship or any longevity in a Championship, it's hard, making that leap and finding the goals to get you points. So you don't need me to tell you, it's going to be really difficult. The players won't be under any illusions, but the squad's looking much better now from what I've seen. The defence you've got options, centre halves, obviously Ikpeatsu, if I pronounce that correctly. I've seen him a few times over the years, and when he's on his day, he's a real handful. So no, I'm really optimistic that they can stay in the division, but it's going to be tough. But yeah, it'll be about turning up and upsetting the odds. And they've done it so many times over the last year, you wouldn't bet against them doing it again.
Yeah, and of course, looking forward to this game against Spurs. Will you be watching the game on Monday night? Do you give the boys any chance?
Like I've already touched on, I was actually at Southampton Shrewsbury last night, and I know there's a smaller gap between Tottenham and Wycombe now, but the principle stays the same, I think. For Wycombe, they have to be right at it, not just in terms of the things I've already spoken about, the motivation and the application. You've got to have that quality as well. So the forward players, the likes of Dave, the front players, Kashket, Onyedinma, the ones who can light up matches, they have to produce moments. I felt that's where Shrewsbury fell a bit short last night. They didn't have that kind of flair in the final third. So you need that, and then you need to be really motivated and hope that a few of the Spurs players have a bit of an off day. For them, their senior players have to lead by example, and if they're at it, the young players normally follow. So really tough game, but yeah, history shows you that you should never rule out a Wycombe victory, especially in this competition. So I hope they do it, because they've had some great success in the cup competitions even after my time. And yeah, pleased that it's on a Monday, so I'll be at home in front of the telly.
Well, yeah, and it's great to hear you found those press cuttings. It must bring it all back. And yeah, for Wycombe fans reflecting this year in the strangest year of all times that we've known, but they're reminiscing back to 20 years ago and to 4 years ago against Spurs, kind of reignites the magic for everyone. And as you've touched on, I know you've got really fond memories of that year at Wycombe, and let's hope history might repeat itself this time around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think alongside the Swindon 3 years, Wycombe's probably one of my fondest memories, and there is regret there that I probably didn't join the following summer when I kind of had the opportunity. I think it was more Chelsea, the agent at the time, and stuff like that meant that it didn't happen. But being, from not too far away, I've got friends who have moved out of London and live in the surrounding area now. So I always pass Wycombe and Adams Park and think what it could have been. But, I maybe wouldn't have had those 3 years at Swindon, and obviously very proud, and we'll always look back on that cup run with such fond memories.